together our committee meeting. We have 2 items on the agenda. I want to speak to the first one. Sorry, I'm bringing this up. The first one we'll talk about is the commercial hours of our commercial trash pickup. This will be a carryover from our last meeting. And then we will talk about give an update on the commercial and residential conflict. Is there anyone here for that item? Can you raise your hand for the second item? Okay, that's most of you. So I'm going to do a flip then. I'm going to flip it because one thing I don't believe is wasting time. And what I want to share is myself, as well as no other council members, are aware of one of the major concerns addressed with bowstring music that is coming and impacting some of the community. I have reached out to our chief of staff. I've talked to Councilor Jones as well. We are in the process of setting up a meeting to discuss that issue directly with the community as well as the business owners. I just came out of the office with the chief of staff. There are also, the city attorney doesn't know about this. She's going to be reaching out to your office as well as the city manager's office in RPD to also be a part of that meeting. So it has not been set yet. Is it Paige? Is she here? Kay? Christina? Okay. Well, I received the email of a residential contact. If anyone else is here for that issue specifically dealing with bowstring and the residents that live over near Lions Park, contact me directly. All the other items, currently our city staff is working on addressing the judgment that came out this summer from the courts. And I believe this Thursday we have a 4x4s with council, and then there's going to be some other meetings with council on how to address the hospitality nightlife areas and the impact it has on residential communities. So that issue is technically in front of the entire council. And my recommendation is until we have any information back from our city attorney's office from that closed session conversation, because it's a legal matter and we have to get the information back from our recommendation and input from our legal staff, there's nothing that this committee, I think, can act on directly. So I wanted to put that out there that we are not punting the issue, but we are still working to address the issue around the commercial and residential use and the conflict and the intersection between hospitality and nightlife with residentials. Councilor Jones.
Thank you so much. 2 things. One, I forgot to text you, but Matt Golden from Bowstring is very interested in being part of that meeting as well. So I should have connected, and I'm sorry. I will make sure to make that connection so that we can find a date that everybody can be there. Perfect. But he's on board, so yes to that. And then secondly, about, this has been in this committee since April, and so I think what you and I discussed was not that I understand exactly what you're saying, and what I'm going to be looking for in Thursday's discussion is when we can what can we daylight and when can we put time frames on there, because the residents, as you've experienced, as I've experienced, it's just not being talked about, even though it's in committee. So I need to be able to say, this is why, this is when we can expect some sort of response, but what they feel is they're being left in limbo, and that's what I'm accountable for. So that's what I'm going to be asking on Thursday when we have our 4x4 is what can I share and when can I share it, because that's what neighbors are looking for.
Yeah, and I think it's not just you. Yes, Madam Mayor.
I apologize.
My attorney.
The direction from the full council was to bring back revisions related to the noise ordinance in October, and so we're still on track to do that.
Okay, October.
Okay, so that information is coming back in October. Again, it's to the full council, and because it's to the full council, I don't think we can make a decision as a committee at the time without that information, based on the input from the city attorney's office and from the staff. So what it would be for my recommendation is to refer this out with no action pending the overall recommendation from the full council. So it's been moved and properly second. Any readiness? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Oh, so it's a no. So it's a 3-1. Okay. So I just wanted to share that. So I went ahead, I flipped it in reverse because of the hands I saw. If there's anyone that's still here for that item, that's the action that has been taken. So we will now go back to the first item, which is around commercial trash pickup and the hours of operation and that impact on residents.
Yep, so this is an item we've had in committee for a couple of months. Our city attorney has presented some benchmarking, a survey, and so she'll continue that. I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Ryan. Members of the committee, what we were asked to do was to look at and compare the ordinances of various municipalities. We used the top 5 municipalities. Certainly, there are other smaller municipalities that have ordinances, but based on some of the feedback, we thought it would be better to look at the larger cities. And so what we did, Luke is moving fast. It's good. What we did was we looked at the top 5 cities and what their ordinances say as it relates to refuge collection. And you'll see that specifically Charlotte, Winston-Salem, and Fayetteville actually address and have time prohibitions. Durham and Greensboro are very similar to Raleigh in that their general noise ordinance standards apply. And so that's why you don't see any specifics as it relates to the time or the distance, but you see penalties. Those penalties are for general violations of the noise ordinance. Charlotte has a graduated system. So the first violation is $100, the second is $500, and the third is $1,000. Winston-Salem simply says up to $500, and then Fayetteville has a graduated system of $100 and $300. Fayetteville has a prohibition from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. during the weekdays, 8 a.m. on the weekends, and theirs is 50 yards versus 300 feet by Charlotte and Winston-Salem. The key takeaways, basically, as you saw on the chart, is that Charlotte, Winston-Salem, and Fayetteville have those specific prohibitions and the various penalty amounts. We also understood from the committee there was interest to understand what the 300-foot prohibition would look like here in Raleigh. And so I'm going to call up, phone a friend.
Can I ask one question
Yes.
before you? I'll ask the chair if I can ask a question. This is really helpful just to kind of go over this at the table. What is the reasoning behind when you think about there's a general noise ordinance, but then you do carve-outs for music, nightlife. We also have for leaf blowers, landscaping. And do you try to align all of those? Is there circumstances where the landscape industry could say, you're regulating us, but you're not regulating these, trash haulers, and sue because they feel like it's unfair discrimination? I mean, just kind of talk to me about different industries, regulation, how much do we try to align those hours, and what is the rationale for treating them differently? If you have any thoughts. I mean, if you don't, okay too. But
I think what I see a lot of times is that ordinances are designed to address specific problems. And so I have to wonder if this became an issue in those communities and the ordinance was the specificity was added to address the particular problem, but I really don't know the answer to that question.
okay.
Also, can you refresh my memory of what, if Raleigh were on this chart, we would be not specifically, but do we have penalties, or is that nothing? We have nothing?
Yes, we have penalties, and the penalty is up to $500.
Have we used that before in this? Do you have record of us using those penalties against any?
I am not aware of that. I think that During the first committee meeting, we did share the issuance of citations, but I don't know that they were specifically related to refuse collection.
Right. Yeah, I feel like the citations at that point were about the noise ordinance, but if we can get that information, that would be great. Thank you.
Councilor Silver.
I recall from the last committee meeting, we heard from the community about the noise, but also from the industry about the rationale for the early pickup. We heard concerns that they do that because there are less vehicles, it is safer in terms of where they have to take the waste. And so I don't know how Charlotte and Winston-Salem or Fayetteville dealt with it, but I was very concerned about those trade-offs or implications if we would adopt one of these. We also heard that some of the companies are exploring plastic containers, so I'm just wondering as we look at this, I just don't know the implications of, for example, Charlotte, a much bigger city, of are there other approaches we can explore? Because I am concerned if we limit the hours, we may solve one problem and then create others. So that's the part that I'm wondering. I don't have a list of all those options for us to consider. There's no question it's a problem. I lived in New York, and at a hotel, they were all metal, and I can hear the not just the sound, but the vibration. So I get it. So I'm just trying to find out, how do we find an alternative that does mitigate the noise and vibration, but also does not create another impact of now waste not being able to be picked up because there's the parking lot is full. So that's the kind of balance that I'm looking for.
Absolutely, and I did try to reach out to my colleagues to see if they could provide us additional information on how many citations they were issued or what other things perhaps they did to address this issue, but unfortunately did not get that information to be able to share it today. I do know that there are some operators in the audience. If that is something that the committee would like to hear from them, that is certainly within the purview of the chair.
Yeah, so one of my questions, and I know we have our Assistant City Manager over solid waste in the audience as well. My question is, as we look at this and the impact on commercial, what impact will we have on our own residential pickup? And I'm thinking as far as in the summer months when it's hot, and they usually start earlier than normal. How do any of these communities also have a heat policy, which if they know the temperatures are a certain way, they're going to pick up, this is waived? Do we know?
I did not see any of that in their ordinance, but what I understood, and we do start as early as, I believe, 5 a.m. In the summer due to the heat. But what we have typically heard is that the small rollout cans don't tend to be the problem. It is the larger dumpsters,
Right.
quote unquote, if you will, and the front end loaders that create the amount of noise. But certainly that is something that we can look at as well. I do know that there are some exemptions sometimes for public utilities, but again, we will wait for direction from the committee.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
I think the other thing that I'd be interested in seeing is 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in Charlotte. I know we discussed last time that the landfill closes at 3 o'clock here. So I'd like to see what time does their landfill close, and are they having the same issues?
I mean, Cary is in Wake County, so I think we should just include Cary because they've obviously figured this out in Wake County.
Right. And what are the holdups that they're having? Because it's not a statewide problem, or in parts of this state, they're able to limit it and minimize that impact. So I just wonder what those reasonings are. So,
Right.
Thank you.
How many residents are here, or individuals are here to speak to this? I'm trying to get an idea based on time.
I've been delegated as the spokesperson
Okay, okay, perfect. What I'll do is, at this time, you've kind of heard where we are and the information. If you could come forward and speak.
Do you want Justin to present the map first?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm sorry. Justin, yeah, I'm sorry.
Good morning. Justin Rametto with Planning and Development. I can just briefly run through a few maps that we put together that will hopefully help your discussion. They're pretty blunt, really just focusing on, excuse me, the 300-foot buffer that Madam City Attorney mentioned. So basically just taking into account all residential zoning and uses, so residential uses in commercial districts as well, and then placing a 300-foot buffer on those. So this is a citywide map. So all of the colored, the yellow area is either residentially zoned or residentially used. You can't really see the orange at this scale, but we'll zoom in. But essentially, the non-colored areas would be the areas where this ordinance would not apply, or yeah, correct. Just slightly zooming in, essentially inside the belt line. Again, the paler yellow is residential zoning or use. The orange outline is the 300-foot buffer. So again, the white areas would be the excluded areas. Zooming in a little further to downtown, same idea, just a little more smaller scale. So you've got Glenwood Avenue here, Fayetteville Street here. Again, the white areas would not be subject to those, to any ordinance that would prohibit the collection within 300 feet of a residential use or zone.
So basically, from what I'm seeing here is we cannot do, if we had a policy that said no pickup until 6 a.m. within this area, properties around Glenwood South, Hillsborough Street, South Wilmington Street, we would not be able to pick trash up on those streets, New Bern Avenue, until after 6 a.m.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I want to be clear. Are we getting complaints from every neighborhood in the city, or it's very specific? I just want to make sure, as we look at remedies, are there quote-unquote hotspots? I don't know how you craft an ordinance that's very specific, or there's remedies for specific hotspots. But I want to make sure we use, a surgical knife versus an axe or, a hammer. I just want to make sure if there's a problem, let's focus on those specific places versus addressing a problem that no one has communicated as a concern. Now, I don't know how we do that, but when I'm looking at this map and taking a step back, I want to make sure that we're right-sizing the solution and not a one-size-fits-all throughout the city. That's kind of what I'm getting to.
Well, since we've had this discussion, we have received complaints or become aware of complaints from residents in the Briar Creek area, residents that live near Rex Hospital, and then there was a resident,
5
Councilmember
points.
Jones, the 5 Points, and then there was another area. What I did do after the last committee meeting was I shared with the group of operators that I had been in contact with that responded to the survey to say these are the individuals that we have received complaints from. Is there an opportunity to address their concerns? One of the operators immediately responded back that they would make adjustments to their routing to address this concern. I think the challenge is that it is difficult to ascertain who the operator is and then to get them to respond. And I don't know, given the scope of all that would be affected, if that it's feasible to be able to do every time a complaint is received. But again, you have representatives in the audience that may be able to speak to that.
So one question I have, and kind of address Councilman Silver's point, this is kind of broad, but sometimes when we're trying to figure something out, figure out if a policy can work, we do a pilot and we target certain areas in certain communities. And so I'm wondering if that would be an approach to pilot an idea in a certain area,
don't you go to
and maybe some of the hot areas, to address those concerns, and then get that feedback and that data, and then kind of, gather it from there. And as we do so often, we have these things called overlays.
And then I have a comment after.
So that's just something I was thinking. Councilman Jones.
Sure. These started off with complaints in Briar Creek, mainly in 5 Points, then Ed Drive from my district. And what I feel like we're seeing along with the noise ordinance is when we wait for residents to complain, then we're constantly coming back to the issue and going, oh, we have to. So I think that's why we're looking for a broader approach that would now do it so we can preemptively make sure that they don't experience it throughout the city. My question is, do we have a log of those complaints? Like, I know from my area who's having issues, but I would imagine maybe near Triangle Town Center, maybe near Crabtree, they're having those issues too, but I don't know. Is there somewhere in the city that has a log of complaints for trash pickup that we can see?
We can go back. I believe that we have that information at the first committee meeting, and we can go back and look at that data and see if we're able to cull that down.
Great. Yeah, that would be
If we
great.
can set up that 311 call center, that'll help too.
I agree with Councilmember Branch that a pilot may be worth exploring, but before we get to that, I certainly want to hear from the residents, but also the industry. An ordinance is a law, and maybe they have ideas that they could put in place. Clearly, there has to, whether it's a pilot, but I'm just trying to find out before we approach this, because I looked at the chart from the last meeting about account service before 6 a.m., and it's about half. I don't know how early they start, whether we look at a 5 a.m. or something earlier, but certainly want to hear from the residents, but also from the industry about some recommendations they could come up with that could mitigate it. Not ideas, but something we want to be assured how we figure that out, that will be put into practice. And then if that does not work, I think it would be incumbent upon us to protect the quality of life of residents that we have to look at a citywide ordinance.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to open it up for those to come speak. We'll start off with 3 minutes and kind of go from there. So if you can just give your name.
And where you
and
live
where
in the
you-
city.
Yeah, where you live
right.
in the city or who you represent before you start.
Still morning. My name is Andy Munn. I'm with EQV Strategic. We're down off Jones Street. I represent the Carolinas chapter of the the Carolinas chapter of the National Waste and Recycling Association. Yes, it's Andy Munn, M-U-N-N. And I represent the Carolinas chapter of the National Waste and Recycling Association.
Thank you.
Many of whom are here in the audience today. We have representatives from Carolina Trash, Anchor Disposal, Liberty, Republic, GFL, Waste Management. They totally have this issue surrounded. Based on the conversations you've had, I think you've touched on every issue that we're concerned about. As you know, waste collection is a well choreographed, highly technical operation that happens while most of us are asleep still. So alterations to that could have wide-ranging effects. And you've talked about it, so I won't belabor the point and waste y'all's time. But just anecdotally, when you wake up in the morning and you go to your coffee shop, it's nice to have empty trash bins and have that business ready to go to serve their customers for the day. You don't want to have to deal with the parking lot of the trash truck coming and things like that. Also, I've got 3 children, high school, middle school, elementary school. They're out the door at 6:30 in the morning for school. So they're waiting on the side of the street, waiting for the bus very early in the morning. So to the extent we can mitigate, our guys on the road versus kids waiting for the school bus, that's obviously of utmost importance. Councilman Silver, thank you for your comments. I think maybe Councilman Branch, maybe a complaint-driven approach to some alterations to the current system. Maybe that's something to explore. But we stand ready as an industry to have a dialogue with you guys, to work with you guys, and to see if there are any tweaks we can make to make your lives easier. Yes.
Okay. So one question I have now, go to other counselors. Have you all been dealing with this issue in other cities, and what have you done, if anything, to try to help mitigate?
Okay, so I would have to defer to any of my local technical folks. We're really just Raleigh-based.
Okay.
So we can get that answer for you, though, to let you know about the ramifications, because, yes, other disposal facilities have different hours versus the ones we use versus the ones in Charlotte and things like that. So we can get you that answer.
Okay. And do any of you all serve Cary? Can you speak to the Cary's policies and how it impacts you? Yeah. Can you come to the mic, please? Or how it doesn't impact you?
Hey, Chase Barber with Republic Services. I do live in Briar Creek, 128 Blackwell Drive. Yeah, and hey, absolutely, we do have to be more cognizant of our areas of service. For the most part, I will need to do a little more deep diving as I came prepared to discuss Raleigh. But absolutely, we'll dig into that and get you an answer for that. I do know there are noise practices and noise ordinances as well. And to your point about Charlotte and other surrounding areas, I will reach out to my peers and find out how they navigate that and get back to you all as well.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Silver.
I have a question about the dumpster. I'm assuming the waste companies provide those dumpsters. Is that you do? Are there options for metal versus plastic? I don't know if the sound is different. I'm assuming yes, but I don't know, of having a metal dumpster versus a plastic dumpster. I know the lift and the hydraulics is still going to make the sound to dump it in, but I'm just trying to understand. What I'm getting to is in sensitive areas, could there be a different type of dumpster that makes less noise, plastic versus metal?
Yeah, we do have vendors in the space with plastic containers. Obviously, that does come with a higher fee. Majority have fresh off the press metal containers, but there are plastic containers in our industry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just have a question about possible calls that you get in for complaints, because for your services outside of us, we don't necessarily hear from those residents because we are not servicing them. So how do you handle complaints, and how can we get access to that information?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, and I'm speaking for Republic Services here, but we can get you any information needed. The protocol for that is speak with the customer, understand what their complaints are, and then usually from a micro perspective, we're able to change and tailor to their needs. But from the macro perspective, it would be very challenging to do that full circle, full scope for our whole operation. But from the micro perspective, we definitely can tailor to a customer's needs.
Sure. I just know that there have been some residents who have tried and said that they're not being responded to. So that stuff I can't, you're a private business. I can't really regulate that. But if there's somewhere where I can see your track record on what that response is and that outcome, then I can hopefully help you. I want us to be in partnership. But if I have residents who are saying, no, they're not responding to me, then I don't know that we're in partnership. So I want to make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I will, if I could, one of the residents that spoke at the last committee meeting that was in Briar Creek did have Republic was one of the accounts, and I reached out to Mr. Barber and he said, we'll take care of it. Now, I'm not vouching for whether he did, but he said he would. So I do think when we find the operator, they are willing to make that change, but it is difficult because obviously they're dumping at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning to figure out who that is in order to reach them to perhaps.
And I know at first we had difficulties reaching them.
Exactly.
So I'm so glad that you guys are here, but I know that in our first committee meeting, it was our city attorney had trouble reaching you. So I can't expect that my neighbors all get that access the same. I would assume that they get the same access that we do. And that's what we're trying to fix because I don't want to limit. I understand the concerns, but I'm here for the residents. You know, that's I'm their voice. And so I need that to be a little bit more open.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So my question, just building with some more specifics for Mr. Munn, maybe just as a, sort of industry representative. I mean, it would be good to know, I understand the preference of the current no holds barred, right, anytime. You obviously can, operate in these different cities. So I'd be very interested in a Charlotte as an example. What does that mean in terms of cost, and operations? Do you have to, position dumpsters in different places? Do you have to charge more because you have a more compressed schedule? Did you have to work with the county to change the time of the tipping? Are there labor issues around, heat? My sense is this is a more technically less labor-intensive, operations at commercial scale, but certainly want to take into account labor issues and heat. And then finally, as we talk about pilots or this sort of patchwork approach, and maybe we don't need a one-size-fits-all, I'd be very interested from the industry to know, like, where is your tipping point? I mean, I'm sure it's not easy for you if we're going on a complaint-driven system and we have like popcorn around the city and we're saying, change this, address this, move your routes. At what point does it become easier to have, right, a holistic, unchanging system, at least for some period of time, as opposed, to pilots, et cetera. So again, don't have to answer that today, but would be interested in feedback from the industry on how we best approach this with you and with residents. I'm, clearly, and I know there's been criticism at times of saying, we're representing residents and we don't really, like businesses, but obviously we need trash picked up and we want that done in a safe manner and an economical manner so that our city has good quality of life. And so I do think, the industry considerations do matter. If this is going to double the cost of garbage, that's material. So,
Councilman Silver.
Two things I want to move us toward a solution. Before an ordinance is created, is there a possibility for those areas that are experiencing complaints that are using metal containers? Yes, there'll be a cost to the vendor, but can we look to see whether we can switch from metal to plastic? Because I want to see if that would mitigate the problem. That's one question. The second one, I don't recall from the previous committee meeting, we know before 6 a.m., I don't know when it starts. When I heard someone just say 3 a.m., I'm like, that's early. I don't know if there is a window of no sooner than 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. I just don't know. It says before 6. So I don't know. That's a big area between late evening and early morning. So I just want to have an indication what's like the earliest pickup that routes start. So it's a two-part question. One, can we explore an option of those places that are complaining shift from metal to plastic, hopefully to mitigate the noise? And that's really complaint-driven without an ordinance. And then number two, what is the earliest time that you start your pickup before 6 a.m. so we understand, looking at the ordinances, how are residents being impacted at what time in the morning?
Okay. So I think we'll probably have a list of things we need. So more than likely, this is going to remain here until we can get some more information. So hopefully you have some notes on what we're asking for. I do have two other things that I would like to ask. One is, can we look at signage at where these dumpsters are located? Because when we hear that, residents don't know who to call, the last thing I want someone to do is call Republic for an issue and it's not even your location. So if we can just figure out a way of what that looks like, some type of standard, and hopefully I'm asking for if maybe you all can create it, because it's a lot easier than if our staff has to write the policy.
So what I'm hearing you say is you would like for the operators to look at some type of signage on the dumpster that says
Who the vendor is.
this is Republic.
Well, what happens is I've seen some of your containers, and if you have a container that's out there in the weather for 10, 15 years, you don't want to replace it. It's still in service. But all the lettering, all the number, it's faded. It's gone. So something that 15 years from now, when your replacement comes in to take your job, they know that, hey, this signage is who's servicing this site. So that's one item. Yes, sir.
That's why, one of my questions, those were two quick questions I want to see that could be answered about complaints going from metal to plastic for those that are complaining. And then I know you're just one company, or maybe Mr. Munn can answer, when in Raleigh did pickup actually start? 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m.?
I think they wrote it down. I think they're going to have, each vendor has different hours and policies depending on where it is.
And the first question, is there a possibility, unless we want to put it on their to-do list for a follow-up, for those that are experiencing noise and vibration to switch from metal to plastic?
I'll touch on that quickly from Republic Services' perspective. If we were to do that, obviously costs would increase to the consumer for the residents. So I'm not sure how we would navigate that because it is the consumer, our customer, paying that cost. But absolutely, that's something we can look into. I'm not going to come up here and say no. Something we definitely can look into.
And go ahead.
If I could add one more complicating factor to think about that we haven't talked about yet, too. Obviously, when the trucks go in reverse, there's the beeping, right? And that's by design to be loud so that people can hear it to get out of the way. We've also heard reports in my research on this of the unhoused sometimes sleeping in containers. And so the more noise you make, the less likely they are to be in there when you dump it as well. So that's an unfortunate thing, but something that actually happens.
Got you. One comment you made was your customer that you're picking trash up for. I was looking at the map that we had here, and I thought about our MSDs. And one of the things that we've done here is we've heard from our residents, and we've heard from our vendor who's providing the service. The part that we're missing, I believe, is the business community that is hiring the individuals to provide their service. So I was wondering if we could possibly share this information, this is for staff, share this information with the map and maybe reach out to our 2 MSDs that we have.
I would talk to the hospitals.
And
right?
the hospitals. We actually had a conversation prior to this about a connection with one of the hospitals and working through that contact issue. Again, there, but also you mentioned Briar Creek. If we could reach out to the owners of the Briar Creek Shopping Center and hear from them, let them know we're having this conversation, because whatever we change also impacts their business model of their employees, because they might not supposed to park in front of dumpsters, but y'all know what actually happens on the ground. So if those are some things that we can reach out to. And I see a hand. Is something you would like? Can you come to the mic, please? Is there anyone else? Yeah, if y'all could just prepare.
Queue up.
Yeah, queue up.
18 minutes.
Carrie Mead Bell out of Clayton, North Carolina with Anchor Disposal, a hauling company out of Clayton, predominantly residential. Few things that you guys have been talking about I wanted to speak to. The plastic containers, they are really more designated for like the 2 and 4 yarders, the smaller containers in areas. A lot of cities do use them where they have to pull them out of, they have them in their kitchens and they have to pull them out of their kitchens to the curb because they're lighter. So a lot of the plastic containers are used for those reasons. I personally have never seen an 8 yarder in plastic. Like, I know I see lots of 2s and 4s, and again, it's usually for the reasons of them being on wheels. And plastic containers do, in the colder weather, I know it's not up north here, but they do tend to break a lot easier and they do cost more. So I feel like the areas that you're talking about, the restaurants, the apartments and whatnot, that those containers, I have never seen a plastic container in any of those. And the banging of it, I don't really think it'd be that much quieter because you still kind of have to bang on the truck to get the stuff out of there that's jammed in there. So I don't really think that a plastic container by no means would solve this issue. One of the biggest things that I would like the residents to consider when they are thinking about this, I previously was in Virginia for 15 years, and I'll talk about the city of Virginia Beach because it's the only one that I've been in a similar situation like this with. And I will tell you that all of our trucks ran from 12 to 2 a.m. until like 6, 7 in the morning, commercial front loads, and that being because of safety. If you're familiar with our industry, unfortunately, we still are in the top 5 deadliest jobs, unfortunately, and safety is the number one concern for us, and the National Waste and Recycling, that's one of their big concerns. And with that, the reason for us getting out there early is to get out of the public's way. Us as haulers, we for sure do not want to start a route at 12 o'clock. To find drivers to do those routes are not fun. But for safety reasons and getting our employees home to their families at night, that is the reason we do it. We don't want to start earlier. It's all, just on safety. So, if we start at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no truck, there's not cars in the way. So we constantly, when we run during the day, the amount of cars that are in the way of the dumpsters, we can't get to it. They have to pull to the side. We try to make phone calls. Nobody moves the car. And children in the streets. It's very dangerous with, the kids in the streets. They just run out in front of the trucks during the summertime. So safety is, I would say with this, the residents, I think, are maybe if we could probably bring some statistics to them as well. I could ask for help with that on a national level. That to me is the biggest concern that I don't think, I know, residents are like, oh, it's waking me up. It's like a 2-minute bang or something. But would you rather that or have a kid, get struck, unfortunately, in the road? I think people need to think about the bigger picture is what I just think is missing here.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
I do think that would be very helpful to see statistics, although I would very much like to see, Raleigh statistics and understand with our cityscape and operations, what have been the accidents, injuries, both for workers and citizens.
Yeah, I'm surprised like I'm saying, a city this size, I'm surprised that even 5 a.m., like I said, in Virginia Beach and whatnot. When I saw Charlotte's, I would really like to dig into that because I'd be very surprised if Charlotte really follows that. I don't see how their front loaders are not out at 2 a.m. Maybe their commercial picking up apartments and stuff are separate or something. Maybe there's a separation there. But for their commercial front load trucks to say that they are picking up the McDonald's, all the regular, I don't see how they're picking them up during the day because the cities are so busy. I don't know a city. I mean, I know if you go to New York City and you're out at night, they start at 9, 10 o'clock at night. And, because that's when it's less people in the road. It's all about safety. So I think that's what's the most important thing here.
Thank you.
And that's all I had to say. Thanks.
Hi there. I am Randy Deming with GFL. Live here now, but I have a unique perspective because I've been in trash for 27 years. So I've driven trucks, I've done safety, I've done HR, I've been all over. So some of the places I have been from the north originally. So when we look at different places and different ordinances and even plastic cans, the one thing you have to remember with plastic cans, the can itself is plastic, but the fork pockets where the forks go in to dump are still metal. So you still hear the same noise. So, and as Carrie said, you don't get those in the larger sizes. But when you're looking at different cities to compare us to, Carrie's not as much of an issue because if you look around downtown here, it's a different setup. So when I was up north, I'm from Michigan originally. I've had the joy of working in Detroit, Chicago, Indianapolis, all large cities. You look at New York, the New York City alleys are plowed with trash trucks. So the trash trucks have plows on them. So they're obviously out first. In Michigan and Chicago, we'd have to get out there first for snow. Down here we have the heat, so it's kind of a different situation. So we have to get out ahead of a storm. We'd have to get out here ahead of the heat. But I think the issue that you have is a lot of the complaints that come through, even some here, are more than at 300 feet. So each city is different based on what they are, but you kind of have to compare like cities. So obviously downtown Raleigh is different than Cary. And looking at the map, not all those shade areas are the issues. It's the issues downtown here where hotels, restaurants, the parking lots are full. So getting to those containers, you're going to have a trash truck at 7 a.m. blocking all of the traffic while we're rolling containers out to the truck. So that's generally the reason. So throughout all those places I've been, Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis, Indianapolis, we've all had different times. Most of the times it's been through the night when we would work through situations with different residents in different areas. You know, in Chicago, we didn't go to the north nice side where all the condos were. We'd be downtown in that area, and people, you know, would accept that, but that's the only option you have. So I've seen anything from working at midnight to coming in at, you know, 6 a.m. in certain areas. But the bottom line is, you know, our trash guys, the last thing we want to do is get up at midnight to come dump trash, but we do it because we have to, and it's more for the customer. So one of the things I've mentioned is what you guys hit on is getting some of the actual hospitality people, the restaurants, getting them involved, because it's definitely going to impact their business and their parking lots, because we don't do it because we want to. We do it because we're asked to, because they have to. So that's part of that issue here. And I guess the other part of that is we've mentioned disposal times. I guess the positive piece here is that Wake County owns the landfill, so you may be able to get somewhere on that side. So, you know, we operate it on a contract with Wake County, so that may be something to assist, but that's only a certain portion on that southern half. Then we've got the Durham side and everything else in Briar Creek and northern stuff. So looking at the map, the only other issue that creates an issue when we create a broad ordinance for a few different instances is how do you enforce it? So how do we as a driver, when you zoom in on that map and you see those shaded areas, how does the driver know I have a 300-foot buffer? How does that driver know? Does he look around and see if there's any houses? And then on the other front, spoken to a few of the police captains, especially in North Hills, he's came to me with a few. How does he enforce it? He has to visibly see it and be there. And he's not going to wait around at a dumpster all night long and put an officer there to see if we come and see what time. And then he has to, you know, determine what decibel it is. So we're willing to work with anyone and everyone, but I wanted to clear up the plastic can piece in some of the other cities too, from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann White. I was here last month, and I am a community member from Briar Creek, and I really felt compelled to speak again as a community member because we're a little off balance here. One of the things that I did like hearing is that there could be more of a surgical approach to this issue. Certainly can appreciate all of the aspects that have been shared. But from my experience of the last 7 years, I do feel that possibly another option could be a central number or phone number to call when there is an issue, because we have tried to communicate with Republic, with GFL through the Raleigh Police Department for the last 7 years and have gotten absolutely no response from them, even with a police officer contacting them. So being able to identify the vendor, it is not readily seen on the dumpsters. I actually had to go take a ladder and climb over and look at over the barricade that some of the companies, the
required
businesses
containers
make around to make it look aesthetically nice, because you can't see which vendor it is. So if there was a central number that could be called and then more of a response from the vendors for those hot spots, that would really be appreciated from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Mr. Munn if you can help her make a connection. I think there is, not to call you out, but we do have a GFL representative, and I think the representative from Republic. Hopefully he comes back in. I know he just stepped out. But if we can make that connection today to help you make that, so we can kind of address your immediate, and there may be, out of your conversation with her, when you come back next month, you can have some better ideas or suggestions on how we can address this issue.
Definitely. Yes, sir. Will do.
All right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all so much for sharing. I think this is where, and I don't mean to bring my teacher mom side in, but this is where we all need to play nice in the sandbox. And each one of us are going to have the story. If it's been 7 years and haven't had anything, that's why I need to know what are the complaints, because if we're not recording the complaints, then I want to be able to trust that information. And on the resident side, I don't want trash to pile up. You know, I don't want our services in our city to get dirtier. So they perform an important task for us as a city. But we need to be able to have the accountability. We as council are accountable to our residents, so they're going to come to us, and then we have to make changes. So I need the industry to be accountable to your customers as well, so that we don't have to do this, because ultimately it should be a discussion between the service provider and the resident, and you guys should be able to handle that. And the only time we should be brought in is when that communication line is broken. And so I want to help fix it and strengthen it, but I need to understand where those holes are. And so that's what I'm noticing right now. I just want to put that out there for everyone. Thank you.
Okay. So I think where we are is there's some actionable items, some feedback and more information that the committee needs before we can move forward. So I look for us to hold this until October 28th. That would be our next meeting here in the chamber. Are there any other questions?
Well, just a question for you. Just how do you see this rolling out? So we get this information back. Would we ask staff to put together a proposal? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts here, and it is hard to do a group design of an operational system or ordinance or.
So I think the goal is once we receive the information, and some of it hopefully staff will receive before the next meeting, once we receive it, then we give direction to staff on is there a policy, is there an ordinance, that we have to give the recommended recommendation. And then based upon that recommended recommendation, it would go to the full council. Mm-hmm. And then the full council would make the final vote and the decision on the recommendation that we want staff to either write an ordinance, write a policy, or do nothing. Like, those are the three options that we have to give to staff. So,
and I guess I would just want to know from staff, are there things you have not heard, would need, anything we can do today to help you? Again, knowing this is no simple matter, just want to make sure, because ultimately it is going to come back to y'all.
Yeah, I mean, the things that we heard that we will get back to you on, we heard that we need to reach out to the MSDs, hospitals, Briar Creek. We need to bring back where the complaints and the citations have actually occurred. I don't know if we can map that. We did have some information at the first meeting about the number of calls for this, but I don't think it was mapped out. We heard that we need to get back with some questions on some of these other ordinances, such as heat exemptions. And then there's a whole list of questions that are really for the vendor association that we need to coordinate, that we make sure we get back to you. But as far as what else, I think until we get a direction at the next meeting, I'm not sure how much else we can do.
Well, and I think Councilor Jones's, I think many good points have been made today, but I really appreciate this thought that there's a lot of these calls are going direct to the service providers. The city has not seen them, so we're only mapping what we've heard. Mm-hmm. And
police calls, correct.
We really could use that information from the waste industry, yep, to really help solve this problem.
Councilor Silver.
In terms of direction, I kind of see three options. One is that can the industry, and I know there are different companies, but there is an association representative, can they come up with solutions that does not involve an ordinance? And it has to be realistic. We are hearing, yes, plastic could work, no, plastic won't work, but we would like to hear some recommendations from the industry that would not require an ordinance. If we are not satisfied with that solution, we now have an ordinance, and what does that look like? And as you just suggested, which I don't think is an option, is kind of the do-nothing approach.
Definitely.
So I think it's either the first or the second. So as we get information, that's where I'm headed. And if we're not satisfied that the industry cannot find a solution without an ordinance, then it's incumbent upon us to figure out what is the right balance going forward.
Councilor Jones.
Yes. This is coming up because the overall discussion that we're having here is about mixed-use development. And as we become a city with more mixed use, this is something we're going to see, ongoing. So I want to help us figure something out beforehand. And when we're talking about direction, I'm thinking, can we not begin to look at what an ordinance can look like? I like your pilot program thing. Can we look at things that are heavily commercial, like our Briar Creek area? What could an ordinance look like over there that we could start the pilot in? I think what I have heard from residents is being frustrated about the committee meetings is that we'll talk about it in May and then we won't talk about it for 3 months and then we push it off to the next month. And so there's a constant feeling, and I understand local government, we're slower moving beasts than others, but is there something we can begin to look at now that can help shorten that process?
I'll make my last point, and not to bring our planning director, Patrick Young, but in the Unified Development Ordinance for new mixed-use development, there is a trigger of a transition zone. And there is a buffer, be it 200, not 300 feet. And the intent of that transition zone that was codified and not policy was to ensure that any mixed-use development would have a buffer to mitigate height, mitigate other uses, and including sound. And it wasn't just for height, it was also for mixed-use shopping centers. And so I don't know whether that's the route going forward. Is it the 200 or should it be 300 feet? But just want to be clear, and again, you don't have to come up, Mr. Young, but just to say that there are built-in transitions recognizing as our city would grow at mixed use. It wasn't just height, but it was shopping centers that were also creating concerns for many residents throughout the city.
It's scary, Councilman Silver. I was thinking that, and you said it, so well said. So we have direction. I think staff has direction. Industry representatives, I think you have direction, and our city attorney as well, and the council will be ready to make a decision and give direction on that. And when I made the comment, do nothing, I didn't mean we're not going to do anything, but I wanted to list what are all the realistic options out there so that everyone knows these are the options that are all on the table. So with that being said, I think we're in a good place, and we'll be back here talking trash in October. We're adjourned.